I sent money home every single month for 1 year and 6 months, almost $400, every month without missing once. And the one time I told my mother I had finally saved something for myself, for my own future, for the house I had been dreaming about since I was a child, she asked me to give it to her. And then she said something I was not ready to hear. She said I was never going to buy that house anyway. That sentence broke something in me. But what came after it, what I discovered about her, about myself, about what home really means, that changed everything. This is my story. I still remember the exact moment. It was past 11 at night here in the United States. I was sitting on the floor of my room, not on the bed, on the floor, with my back against the wall and my phone in my hand. The room was small, one window, a heater that made noise all night, two other guys sleeping in the same apartment. That was my life. I had just finished a 12-hour shift. My feet hurt so much I could barely take off my shoes. I ate something cold I had left from the morning. I didn't even heat it up. I was too tired to stand in front of the microwave for 2 minutes, but I was happy that night. Not the kind of happy that makes you jump around, the quiet kind, the kind that sits inside your chest and stays there. Because that day, before I came home, I had opened my bank app and looked at the number, the real number, the number I had been building for 1 year and 6 months. I looked at it for a long time. I kept thinking, this is real. I did this. I came here with almost nothing. I slept in a room with strangers. I worked jobs that broke my body. I sent money home every single month, and I still managed to save this. For me, for my future, for the house I used to dream about when I was a kid in Kolkata, lying on a thin mat on the floor, listening to the street outside. I wanted to tell someone. That was the feeling. I just wanted to share it with someone who would understand what it meant. Not the number, the feeling behind the number, the sacrifices, the nights I didn't go out when everyone else did, the times I said no to things because I was thinking about this moment. So I called my mother. It was morning in India. I knew she would be awake. She is always awake early, making tea, starting her day before anyone else in the house. I could almost picture her when the phone rang. The kitchen, the small stove, the sound of the street beginning outside. She picked up. Her voice was warm. It always is in the beginning of a call. She asked how I was. I said fine. Tired, but fine. She asked if I had eaten. I said yes. The usual things we say to each other. And then I told her. I said, Ma, I have been saving. Seriously saving. And now I have something real. Enough to start thinking about the house. About coming back and having something solid. About the plan I always talked about. The small business. The independence. The life I wanted to build for myself when I returned. There was a pause. Not a long one. Maybe 2 or 3 seconds. But I noticed it. Then she said, "That is good, Beta." And her voice shifted a little. Not in a bad way, I thought. Just shifted. She asked how much. I told her. Another pause. And then she said something I was not ready for. She said she needed money. That there was something urgent. She didn't explain everything right away. She spoke carefully, the way people speak when they are about to ask for something they know might be difficult. She said things were tight. She said the situation at home was complicated. And then she said, "You can give it to me as a loan. You can lend it to me." I didn't speak for a moment. I was still sitting on the floor. My back was still against the wall. But suddenly the room felt different. That quiet happiness I had been carrying in my chest. I could feel it changing into something else. Not anger. Not yet. Something more like confusion. Like when you are walking and you expect a step to be there and it isn't. I said, "Ma, this is my savings. This is for the house. For when I come back." She said she knew. And then she said it. She said, "You can lend it to me. You don't need to worry so much about the house. You will be fine." I said, "What do you mean I will be fine?" And she said, "Karan, you were never really going to buy a house anyway." I heard the words. I heard each one separately. I sat with them for a second. And then I understood what she had just said to me. She didn't say it with cruelty. That was the strange part. She said it the way people say things they actually believe. Like it was just a fact. Like she was being realistic. Like she was saving me from an illusion. "You were never really going to buy a house anyway." I didn't say anything back. I think I said, "Okay." Or maybe I said I would think about it. I don't remember exactly. I just know that at some point the call ended, and I was still sitting on the floor, and the room was still small, and the heater was still making that noise, and everything looked exactly the same as before the call. But nothing felt the same. I put the phone down next to me on the floor. I looked at the ceiling. There was a water stain up there. I had looked at that stain 100 times before. I looked at it again now. I kept thinking about the moment before I called her. How happy I was. How proud. How I had been carrying this thing inside me all day. This small, silent victory. Waiting to share it with the one person I thought would understand what it cost me. I thought about the first months here. The cold. I had never felt cold like this before. In Kolkata, the winters are mild. Here, the cold was a different thing entirely. It got inside your clothes, inside your bones. I remember walking to work in the dark because the shift started before sunrise and I didn't have a car. I remember my hands going numb. I remember thinking, just keep walking, just keep going. I thought about the money I sent every month, almost $400, every single month without fail. Not because someone forced me, because I wanted to, because they were my family and I loved them, and I knew things were not easy back home. I sent it, and I didn't complain. I didn't keep score. But I also had a plan. I always had a plan. That was the thing my mother didn't seem to see. Or maybe she saw it and just didn't believe in it. The plan was never just about survival. It was about building something real. A house. Something I could stand in front of and say, I made this possible. Me. With my own hands and my own years. And in one sentence, one quiet, casual sentence, she had said that plan was not real, that I was not capable of it, that she believed in my ability to send money every month, but not in my ability to change my own life. I lay down on the floor that night. I didn't move to the bed. I just lay there with my phone on my chest and the heater making its noise and the guys sleeping in the next room. I didn't cry. I want to say I cried because maybe that would sound more dramatic, but I didn't. I just felt very, very tired. More tired than I felt after the 12-hour shift. A different kind of tired. The kind that starts somewhere deep and doesn't go away with sleep. I looked at the water stain on the ceiling, and I thought, does she really believe that? Does she really think I have been doing all of this for nothing? That all these months, all this sacrifice, all these cold mornings and long nights, none of it was going to become anything? Or was it something else? Was it that she needed the money and this was the only way she knew how to ask? I didn't know. I still don't know. And that not knowing, that was the thing that kept me awake until almost 3 in the morning, staring at that ceiling, in that small room, far from home, wondering if the person I loved most in the world had ever really believed in me at all. I woke up the next morning and the first thing I felt was the floor. I had fallen asleep there, still dressed from work, phone on my chest. The heater had stopped making noise at some point during the night and now the room was cold. That sharp, dry cold that gets into your throat when you breathe. I didn't move right away. I just stayed there, on my back, looking at the ceiling. The water stain was still there. Of course it was. Nothing had changed in the room. Everything had changed in me. One of my roommates walked past to go to the bathroom. He didn't say anything. He probably thought I had just come home late and fallen asleep on the floor. It wasn't the first time one of us had done something like that. We were all tired in this apartment. All of us carrying something. I sat up slowly. My back hurt. My neck hurt. I picked up my phone and looked at the time. 6:42 in the morning. I had maybe 3 hours before my next shift. I should have slept in the bed. I should have eaten something real the night before. I should have done a lot of things differently. But I kept thinking about the call. Not the whole call. Just that one sentence. The way it sat inside me like something I had swallowed and couldn't digest. You were never really going to buy a house anyway. I went to the bathroom and washed my face with cold water. I looked at myself in the mirror for a moment. I don't usually do that, look at myself for a long time. But that morning I did. I looked tired. Not just physically. The kind of tired that shows in your eyes, not your skin. I thought about who I was before I came here. I was 24 years old when I left Kolkata. I didn't have much. A small bag, some cash, a contact number of a guy who knew a guy who could help me find work when I arrived. My mother cried at the airport. My father shook my hand, which is his way of showing love because he doesn't know how to hug. My younger sister held my arm for a long time and didn't say anything. I had never been on a plane before. I remember sitting in that seat and looking out the window as Kolkata disappeared below me. The streets, the buildings, the river, all of it getting smaller and then becoming cloud. I remember thinking, don't come back empty. Whatever you do, don't come back with nothing. That was the one thing I promised myself, not to become rich. I was never thinking about being rich. I was thinking about something much simpler and much more specific. A house, a small business. The ability to take care of myself without depending on anyone. The ability to look my family in the eye and say, I did something real with the time I was gone. That was the dream. Not a big dream. A human one. And I had been working toward it every single day since I arrived. The first job I had here was in a warehouse. Nights. Moving boxes. Scanning things. Walking miles every shift on a concrete floor. My feet would bleed sometimes, where the skin broke near the heel. I bought the cheapest shoes I could find because I was saving everything I could. I ate rice and lentils almost every day because it was cheap, and I knew how to make it. I didn't go out. I didn't spend on things I didn't need. And every month, without fail, I sent money home. Almost $400. Every single month. Even in the months when my own account was thin. Even in the months when something unexpected happened. A medical bill, a broken phone, a week where I lost shifts because the warehouse slowed down. I still sent it. Because they were my family. Because I knew my mother used that money for the house expenses, for my father's medication, for small things that added up. I knew it mattered. I sent it because it mattered and because I loved them, not because anyone asked me to every month. It was just something I did. Part of my routine. Transfer the money. Confirm it was received. Move on. I never kept score. But standing in that bathroom that morning, water still cold on my face, I thought about the score for the first time. 1 year and 6 months. Every month. Almost $400 each time. I did the math slowly in my head. It came out to more than $7,000. $7,000 I had sent home while living in a small room with 2 other men, eating cheap food, wearing worn-out shoes, sleeping on a floor. $7,000 I had given without asking for anything back. And now she was asking me to give more. To give the part I had kept for myself. The part I had been protecting all this time. Not for anything luxury. Not for comfort. For a house. For a future. For the only real goal I had carried across an ocean. I dried my face and went to the kitchen. I made tea. The way we make it back home. Strong. With milk and a little sugar. It was the one thing in this apartment that felt familiar. The smell of it. I stood by the small window while it cooled and looked out at the street below. It was still dark outside. The street lights were on. A car passed slowly. Nobody was walking yet. The city was just starting to wake up. I thought about calling her back. Not to fight. I don't fight with my mother. I never have. Even when I disagree with her, I usually stay quiet and feel it alone. That is just how I am. But I wanted to understand something. I wanted to ask her, do you really believe that? Do you really think I am not going to do this? Because if she believed that, then what did she think I was doing here? What did she think all of this was for? I had never asked her that directly. We talked about my life here in general terms. She asked if I was safe. I said yes. She asked if I was eating. I said yes. She never asked about the plan in detail. She never asked, how much have you saved? What are your exact steps? When do you think you will come back? She never asked those things. Maybe because she never really thought the plan was real. Maybe she thought I was just working and surviving and sending money home. Maybe in her mind that was the story. The son who went abroad to help the family. Not the son who went abroad to build his own life. I drank my tea slowly. I thought about a conversation we had when I was maybe 15 or 16 years old. I had told her I wanted to open a small shop someday. Something of my own. She had smiled and said, focus on your studies first. The way you say something to a child to close a conversation gently. Not unkind, just not serious. I wondered if she had ever stopped seeing that version of me. The boy with the idea that was not quite real yet. I finished the tea. Washed the cup. Put it back in the rack. I had a shift in 2 hours. I needed to eat something, change my clothes, and leave. The city didn't stop for my feelings. The job didn't stop. The rent didn't stop. None of it stopped. So I moved. I moved the way I had been moving for 1 year and 6 months. Through tiredness, through loneliness, through cold mornings and long nights, and a silence inside me that I had learned to live with. But this silence was different. This one had her voice in it, and that made it heavier than any shift I had ever worked. There are days here when time moves strangely. Not fast, not slow, just strange. Like you are inside the day, but also watching it from somewhere slightly outside of yourself. You go through the motions, wake up, work, eat, sleep, and somewhere in the middle of all of it you forget, for a few hours, that you are carrying something heavy, and then you remember. That week after the call with my mother was like that. I went to work every day. I did my shifts. I came home. I ate. I slept. And in between all of those things and the small, quiet moments, walking to the bus stop, waiting for my food to heat up, lying in bed before sleep came, I kept returning to the same place inside my head. Her voice. That sentence. The calm, ordinary way she had said it. I didn't call her back that week. I know that sounds cold. But I needed time to sit with what I was feeling before I opened my mouth, because I knew myself well enough to know that if I called her before I was ready, one of two things would happen. Either I would say something I regretted, or I would say nothing real at all. Just the usual words. The safe words. The words that kept everything smooth on the surface while everything underneath stayed broken. I didn't want either of those. So I waited. I talked to my sister instead. Her name is Priya. She is 3 years younger than me, and she is the one person in my family who has always spoken to me like I am a full human being with real thoughts. Not a son. Not a brother with a role to play. Just a person. I called her on a Thursday night. It was early morning her time. She was getting ready for college. I could hear the sounds of the house behind her. Water running somewhere. My mother's voice in another room. The street outside. I told her what happened. Not everything. The main thing. What my mother had said. The loan. The sentence at the end. Priya was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Karan. She didn't mean it the way it sounded. I said, how did she mean it then? Another pause. She said, she is stressed. There are things happening here that you don't fully know about. She didn't explain well. She never explains well when she is worried. I said, Priya, I understand she is stressed. I send money every month because I know things are not easy. But what she said, that I was never going to buy a house anyway, that is not about stress. That is about what she believes. About me. Priya didn't answer right away, and her silence told me more than words would have. Because Priya is honest. She doesn't protect people from the truth to make them feel better. If she had a strong argument against what I was saying, she would have made it immediately. The pause meant she didn't have one. She said, I think she loves you. I just think she doesn't always understand you. I said, yeah. We stayed on the phone for a little while longer. She told me small things about her day, about college, about a friend of hers. Normal things. And I listened, because sometimes you need to hear normal things. Sometimes you need to remember that life is still happening somewhere, in ordinary and gentle ways, even when your own heart is heavy. After I hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time. I thought about what Priya had said, that my mother loved me but didn't always understand me. I believed both parts of that. I had never doubted that she loved me. Love was never the question. The question was something harder to name, something closer to, does she see me? Not the son who sends money. Not the boy who left. Me, the person I am trying to become. I thought about what it means to be seen by the people you love most. I had met other Indian guys here in the United States. Different cities, different jobs, different stories, but the same shape underneath. Guys who came here with a plan and spent years watching that plan misunderstood by the people back home. Families who thought the money was the whole story. Who didn't realize that the money was only the surface of a much deeper thing. Because when I saved, it wasn't just saving. Every dollar I kept was a decision, a choice to delay something small now for something real later, to say no to the dinner out, no to the new jacket, no to the small comforts that make hard days easier, to look at my account number every week and feel that it was moving, slowly, in the direction I had chosen. That discipline, that was mine. Nobody gave it to me. Nobody helped me build it. I built it alone, in a cold room, far from everything familiar, with no guarantee that any of it would work out the way I hoped. And she didn't see that part. She saw the number, and she saw a resource. Not a life's worth of quiet sacrifice. The following weekend I finally called her. It was a Saturday afternoon for me. I had the day off. I had cleaned the room, done my laundry, eaten a real meal. I wanted to call from a calm place, not from exhaustion or hunger or the end of a long shift. She picked up after 2 rings. Her voice was warm again. She asked how I was. I said fine. She asked if I had eaten. I said yes. The usual beginning. And then I said, Ma, I have been thinking about what you said last week. She was quiet for a second. I said, about the loan, and about what you said at the end, that I was never going to buy a house anyway. She said, Karen, I didn't mean... I said, let me finish. Please. She went quiet. I took a breath. I had thought about this moment many times during the week. I had practiced the words, in a way. Not a script. just the shape of what I needed to say. I said, I have been here for 1 year and 6 months. I work long shifts. I live in a small room. I eat simple food. I don't spend on things I don't need. Every month I send money home. And I do it because I love this family and I want to help. But I also have a plan for my own life. A real plan. Not a fantasy. A plan with numbers and steps and a timeline. She didn't say anything. I said, when you said I was never going to buy a house anyway, I need to know if you actually believe that. Because if you do, I want to understand why. After everything I have done here, why would you believe I am not capable of this one thing? The silence on the line was long. Long enough that I checked once to make sure the call was still connected. Then she spoke. And what she said, I was not ready for it. Not because it was cruel, not because it was another dismissal, but because it was something I had never heard from her before. Not in 26 years, not once. She said, I am scared you will stay there. Her voice cracked on the last word, just slightly, but I heard it. She said, if you buy a house here, you won't come back. I know how these things go. You buy a house, you build a life, and India becomes somewhere you visit. I don't want to lose you to that country. I said what I said because I was scared, not because I don't believe in you. I didn't speak for a moment. I sat with those words, and something shifted inside me. Not all the way. The hurt didn't disappear. What she had said still sat in me like a bruise. But underneath the hurt, something new appeared. Understanding, not agreement, not forgiveness yet, just understanding. She wasn't saying I was incapable. She was saying she was afraid of losing me, and she had said it the wrong way, the worst possible way, because fear doesn't always come out as fear. Sometimes it comes out as doubt, as dismissal, as a sentence that sounds like it's about your ability but is really about someone else's grief. I didn't know what to say back, so I just said, Ma, I am not buying a house here. I am buying a house in India. I am coming home. That was always the plan. Another silence. Then she said, really? Just that word, quietly, like a child asking something they are almost afraid to hope for. I said, really? After that call, I sat in my room for a long time without doing anything. Not on my phone, not eating, not thinking about work or money or the next shift, just sitting, with the quiet around me and the afternoon light coming through the one window and the sounds of the street below moving on without me. Something had settled, not everything. There were still things inside me that hadn't been resolved. The hurt of what she said was still there. You don't shake something like that off in a single phone call. A sentence that goes deep enough stays for a while, even after you understand where it came from, even after you forgive it. But something had settled. I thought about what she said, that she was afraid I would stay here, that the house would become a reason to never come back, that she would lose me to a country that wasn't ours. I had never thought about it from that side. When I imagined my future, I always imagined it in India. Always. The house I pictured was always on an Indian street. The business I imagined was always in a neighborhood I knew. The mornings I dreamed about. Chai, noise, familiar faces, the smell of something cooking. Those were always Indian mornings. I never once thought about staying here permanently. This country had given me something real. The ability to earn, to save, to build towards something. I was grateful for that. I would always be grateful for that. But this was never home. Home was somewhere else. Home was where I was going back to. My mother didn't know that, because I had never said it clearly. I had talked about the plan, the house, the business, coming back, but I had talked about it the way you talk about something in the future. Abstract, distant, not like a decision that was already made. And so in her mind, maybe, it had always been a maybe, a possibility that could go either direction. She didn't know it was the only direction I had ever been moving in. That week I started writing things down, not in any formal way, just in the notes app on my phone, late at night when the apartment was quiet. Numbers, timelines, rough calculations. What I had, what I needed, how long it would realistically take, what the first steps would look like when I got back. I did this because I needed to see it clearly myself, not for her, for me, because somewhere in that week, without fully realizing it, I had started to question my own plan, not abandon it, but question it in a way I never had before. Her words had planted a small seed of doubt, not in the dream itself, but in whether I was doing enough to protect it, whether I was being serious enough, whether I had let it stay too abstract for too long. Writing it down made it concrete. It also made it real in a different way. Seeing the numbers on a screen, seeing the timeline, seeing what was possible. It was like something clicked into place. I had been carrying the plan in my heart for 1.5 years. Now, it was on paper. And paper doesn't lie to you. Paper doesn't get scared or emotional or confused. It just shows you what is true. What was true was that the plan was achievable. Not easily, not quickly. It would take more time. More months of long shifts and cheap meals and quiet evenings in a small room. More discipline. More saying no to things that didn't matter and yes to the one thing that did. But it was achievable. And I had already proven, to myself, if to nobody else, that I had what it took to do this kind of hard, slow, invisible work. I had been doing it for 18 months. I could keep doing it. I called my mother again 2 weeks later, not to continue the difficult conversation. That one had been finished, more or less, in the call where she told me the truth about her fear. This call was different, lighter. I called on a Sunday morning her time. I knew she would be relaxed. The week's work behind her, the day open in front of her. She picked up and her voice was soft. We talked for almost an hour. I told her things I had not told her before. Not complaints, not heaviness. The actual texture of my life here. The small moments. The way the city looked early in the morning before most people were awake. The friendships I had made. Small ones, quiet ones. The kind you build with people who are also far from home and understand without you having to explain. The food I had learned to cook that wasn't quite right but was close enough to make me feel better on hard days. The pride I felt when I looked at my savings and knew that every single dollar in there had cost me something real. She listened, really listened. I could tell because she didn't interrupt. She didn't ask practical questions in the middle. She just stayed on the line and received what I was giving her. And at some point she said, "I didn't know it was like that for you." I said, "I know. I should have told you more." She said, "You always said you were fine." I said, "I was fine. But fine doesn't mean easy." She understood that. We didn't talk about the loan again that day, or in the calls after. It just stopped being the thing between us. I don't know exactly how. These things don't always resolve through a specific conversation. Sometimes they just slowly dissolve when other things replace them. When honesty replaces distance. When real words replace safe ones. She never lent the money, in the end. Whatever the situation was at home, it was handled another way. She didn't explain exactly how, and I didn't push. What mattered was that my savings stayed intact. The plan stayed intact. The months after that felt different, not easier in the physical sense. The work was still hard, the room was still small, the cold was still cold, but something internal had shifted. I was walking through my days with more clarity, more certainty, like someone who has looked at a map and confirmed, yes, this is the right road, even if the road is long, even if you can't see the end of it yet. I thought about my father sometimes during those months. He is not a man who says much. He never has been. But the morning I left for the airport, he shook my hand, and when I looked at his face, I saw something that I didn't have the words for at the time. Not pride, exactly. Something older than pride. Something closer to trust. Like he was handing something to me and believing I would carry it well. I thought about that look often. I wanted to be worthy of it. Not for him. Not to prove something to anyone back home. But because I had made a promise to myself when I was sitting on that plane watching Kolkata disappear below me, that I would not come back empty, that I would come back with something real, and I was going to keep that promise. There is a specific image I hold in my mind when the days are hard, when I am tired, and the shift was long, and the room feels smaller than usual, and I miss everything familiar, the sounds, the smells, the faces, the feeling of being somewhere that belongs to you. The image is simple. A door that I own, that belongs to me, that I bought with money I earned, dollar by dollar, shift by shift, month by month, in a cold country far from everything I loved. A door I can walk through and know, this is mine. I built this. Nobody gave it to me. Nobody can take it from me. Behind that door, my mother's voice, my father's quiet presence, my sister's laugh, chai in the morning, noise that I know, light that feels like home. That image is what I carry. On the hardest days, it is the only thing I carry. I am still here, still working, still saving. The plan is moving slowly, the way real things move. Without drama, without shortcuts, with just the daily decision to keep going. My mother and I talk more honestly now than we ever have. She asks real questions. I give real answers. She knows about the timeline. She knows about the steps. She knows I am coming home. Last week she called me first, which she almost never does. She said she had found a neighborhood in Kolkata she thought I might like. Quiet streets, close to the market, reasonable prices. She had spoken to someone there. She had information. I didn't say anything for a moment, because this woman, who had once told me I was never going to buy a house anyway, was now calling me to help me find one. I don't think she even realized what it meant. She was just being my mother, practical, moving forward, doing what she could. But I felt it. I felt it all the way here, in my small room, with the heater making its noise and the street moving below, and the water stain still on the ceiling. I felt it like the first warm day after a winter that lasted too long. I sat there with the phone in my hand and my eyes closed, and for the first time in a very long time, the future felt like something I could actually touch.